All right, good evening, members of council, administration, and certainly those who are streaming from the comforts of your home. Welcome to our regular council meeting this evening. Roll call, members of council are all present except our councillor Jobin, who is on personal leave this evening. And so with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and to the general viewing audience, there was no closed meeting schedule today or this evening. And the land acknowledgement was read out at a special council meeting earlier this evening. And so I'll go right into disclosure. And if there's any disclosure opportunity interest on the agenda to present as presented to you this evening, please come forward now. None indicated, we'll have that duly recorded. I do have 3 sets of minutes, a regular council meeting, February the 8th, 2022, as well as a public council meeting on the Untitled Drain, and followed by a special council meeting, Oldcastle Stormwater Master Plan. And so if I could have a motion to adopt those minutes as presented. Councilor Tonio and Councilor Houston. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, we do have supplementary agenda adoption. I need a motion to approve the supplementary items of bylaws 2022-07 and 2022-08. So if I could have that moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti and supported by Councillor Altenhoff. We have no delegations, members of council, to deal with this evening. So we'll go right into communications for information. We do have 14 items of communications. If I have a motion to receive said communications. Councillor Houston moves, no have support. Councillor Altenhoff, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. On those 14 items, is there anything that council want, to bring forward to of any of their interest? Okay. The only thing there may be, Madam CAO, just to our arborists. I know that a couple of the townships in that, they were, the fear of the gypsy moth infestation in certain parts of Ontario. I know we had that issue in a few years back, and it defoliated a lot of our oak trees in Lacoste Park and so forth. Is there any presence or is there any ways or means that to help protect against the gypsy moth? So don't need the information tonight, but certainly if we can relay that to Senator Casey, I mean, it's a point of interest. I know this was devastating to a lot of our oak trees a few years back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make an inquiry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to committee minutes. Our Tecumseh Accessibility Advisory Committee, February the 10th. I need a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Councillor Houston and Councillor Tonio. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, those minutes are carried. Thank you. So then we'll move right on to reports now. Our first report, first couple of reports are from our Chief Administrative Officer, and I believe the on deck from that will be the people and culture report. So, Madam CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'll take the first one, and that is with respect to the 100th anniversary celebration and an update for council. A report to be received this evening, but just wanted to update council on where we stand with respect to our financial commitments for this event. Council recalls a budget of $286,000 total was approved as part of the 2022 budget deliberations, and that was to be offset by $127,500 in grants and sponsorships, with the balance of $158,500 to be funded from reserves. And this evening we can advise that of the grant applications that we have submitted, we were approved in part by Heritage Canada Community Anniversaries Grant. We had applied for $69,050, and due to fairly high subscription to this grant for this year, we were awarded $29,500, a shortfall of just under $40,000. So we are endeavoring to make up for those funds. The Veterans Affairs Canada Commemorative Partnership Program, Community War Memorial Fund, that application has been successful for the full amount of $10,000. And that is to be dedicated to the mural that is planned for the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 261 building. We have also applied to the Heritage Canada Legacy Fund, and that is an application in the amount of $10,000 that would be put towards the creation of a monument celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Fire and Rescue Services. That includes the bronzed firefighter equipment atop a granite base that's etched with the names of those who lost their lives in service to the community. As of this moment, we don't know the outcome of that, but hoping to find that out soon. And then additionally, 2 new grants have been applied for. So we have been made aware of the Reconnect Ontario 2022 grant. That is a provincial grant that supports festivals and events that have a tourism economic impact and will help motivate visitors to rediscover Ontario. So we put together an application in the amount of $56,915 and combined the anniversary celebration with our annual Canada Day event. So essentially $10,000 of that total amount is for towards the Canada Day event celebrations, and then $46,915 towards the anniversary. So as of this date, we have not yet received notification on the application's results. And this funding would be going towards supporting contract staffing, materials and supplies, equipment rental, advertising, and performers and artists. And then there was also a federal grant that came through recently, My Main Street Community Activator. It's a partnership between the Economic Development Council of Ontario and the Canadian Institute. And it is to help revitalize communities. We partnered with the BIA to apply for support towards 3 murals, 2 of which are proposed by the BIA in this year, and also our Legion building mural. So the total amount of the grant is in the order of $20,195, $18,500 towards the Legion mural, and then the 2 BIA murals, a grant in the amount of just under $1,700. So we have not yet received notification of the application's results yet. In terms of our sponsorship campaign, good news here. We had originally set out to attempt to receive $39,000 in sponsorship towards the event. And whilst the report indicates $57,500 today, I can tell you that this evening we have $60,000 raised in direct sponsorships from the community. So that's been very rewarding and very helpful to the bottom line for the event. So we've had excellent support through the Mayor's Task Force, good leadership. We have recently posted the event calendar to the website, and we have made tremendous progress under the leadership of our coordinator, Carrie Rice, and the whole team has been fabulous in moving things along. So we're happy to provide this report to you this evening and ask for you to receive it for information. However, if you have any questions, I'm here and Carrie is on this evening as well So we're happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Before taking question, I being part of, on the committee with Councillor Tonio. You're right. I want to commend Carrie and certainly the administrative staff. They've done an incredible job in kind of like the glue that binds everything, and in terms of the successful requirement. And I know the sponsorship is going quite well, and I know for a fact that I've got a couple others that I'm waiting that I feel will be successful. So that number is going to grow again. So it'll make up for the shortfall at the other end. But we do have a bit of time, but the support in the community has been phenomenal. They're I think after 2 years of hunkering down, people are ready to have a party, and so I'm really pleased with the task force, the group. They're very enthusiastic, and they've rolled up their sleeves and they're ready to go. And I'll tell you, don't plan on sleeping too much on that weekend, because it's Carrie and group, they've got us from 6 o'clock in the morning some days till 10 o'clock at night. So we've got a lot of events and a lot of showcasing the community. And I'll just a nudge to Councillor Dowie, to your good friend Minister McLeod. Give her a couple of phone calls and a couple of nudges, and we on the application, and I know you're going to do your best in securing that. So thank you for that. So any further questions or comments, certainly from the group. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to kind of echo your enthusiasm and your appreciation. Really, this is a once in a lifetime, activity. This will never happen again. And to see the community.
Not with us.
Well, not forever, because we're never going to be 100 years old again, right?
Yep.
So, time only marches forward. So to everyone involved, administration, the council members that are involved with this organization, thank you very much. And I believe this is an awesome start. This is really great to see, and let's keep going, and hopefully this thing will grow even beyond what we were thinking. So thank you very much.
All right. Any further questions or comments? Then a motion to receive the report as presented by our CAO. Councillor Dalton-Hoff moves, Councillor Houston support. All in favor, enthusiastically? Carried. So thank you very much, both certainly the administrative staff and certainly Carrie for your hard work, and we'll have a good time. All right, our next is our People and Culture, non-union and council economic salary adjustment 2022. Call upon a Director of People and Culture to summarize the report and bring forward the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara. Good evening, Council. So administration is bringing forward 3 recommendations this evening that pertain to the non-union and council economic adjustment for 2022. As Council is aware, compensation and salary administration policy provides the framework for the annual compensation to be paid to the management and non-union administrative staff. The policy stipulates that an annual economic adjustment will be made upon approval by Town Council and reflected in the wage grid. The recommended economic adjustment being made in this report is based on the established criteria set out in the policy and takes into consideration that the Ontario Consumer Price Index, or what we call the CPI, increase for December 2021 over December 2020 was 4.4%, and that OMERS announced that pensions will increase by 2.74% in 2022. And in addition, that the collective agreements with QP Local 702.1, 702.2, and 702.5 were recently negotiated and included a wage increase of 1.5% in the first year with additional benefit improvements, and a wage adjustment of 2% in each of the years 2022, 2023, and 2024. And that the employment agreement for Tecumseh Firefighters Association was also recently negotiated and include a wage increase of 1.5% as well as benefit improvements in each of the years 2022 to 2025. Considering all these factors, it's being recommended that an economic increase of 2% be approved to the non-union group retroactive to January 1st, 2022. In addition to the recommendations concerning economic adjustments for non-union staff, Bylaw number 2006-84, as amended by Bylaw number 2019-62, sets out the annual salary for the mayor and members of council and provides for an annual salary adjustment equal to the economic adjustment awarded to non-union employees. And it also stipulates that the economic adjustment for the mayor, deputy mayor, and councillor positions in 2019 and future years be varied to normalize the base pay for the three positions in order to be more aligned with the comparative practice and the 65th percentile. So 100% of the economic adjustment for the mayor, 50% for councillors, and 25% for deputy mayor. In consideration of all of this, and in conclusion, administration is recommending the following: that the CAO PC 2022-02 report entitled Non-Union and Council Economic Adjustment for 2022 be received. Secondly, that an annual economic adjustment for 2022 of 2% be approved effective January 1st, 2022 for the management and non-union administrative staff wage grid in accordance with the compensation and salary administration policy. And further, that an annual economic adjustment for 2022 be approved as follows in accordance with Bylaw number 2006-84 and amended by Bylaw 2019-62, being a bylaw to provide for the remuneration of members of council. Mayor at 2%, deputy mayor at 0.5%, and councillors at 1%. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Benici. Questions or comments on the report? Okay, well, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I'm just prepared to move the report.
Thank you. Councillor Dowie, support. Okay, any further questions or comments on the report? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Benici.
Thank you.
All right. The second, okay, we'll move on to development services. We have development services zoning bylaw amendment, existing garden suite temporary use, proposed change to permanent additional residential unit standalone at 7035 10th concession, scheduling for a public meeting. I'll call upon the director to summarize the report and bring the recommendation forward. Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to everyone. This is one of three reports. I'll be reviewing the first. Mr. Jeffrey will be reviewing the other two, and they relate to something that will become more familiar to council with time. Additional residential units, they're called frequently ARUs. Provincial legislation was recently changed through the Planning Act to ensure that in order to address what has been described more recently as a housing crisis, but has identified over the last number of years as a high need for housing, a desire to make available to the citizens of our communities to adopt their current houses into adding more units to them. So you will have recalled that in the official plan, there was extensive policy that identified in our existing housing stock in the town, whether it be in the agricultural areas or within our settlement areas, our urban areas, how we would move forward with providing a policy framework to allow additional residential units and how they ultimately will be permitted as of right in the community. So we have been working on a set of guidelines that will guide us towards a full housekeeping amendment in our zoning bylaw in the near future. In the meantime, we've had a number of residents who have been seeking permission to have additional residential units allowed in their homes as we speak. And they can either be a residential unit, they would commonly be referred to as granny flats, or they would be a conversion inside your house, so your townhome or your semi-detached to convert a unit inside your existing home. So we have 3 applications that have come forward. Council passed a zoning amendment a number of weeks ago for a Maidstone Hamlet for something similar. And the application that we're dealing with this evening, Sean, if we could go to attachment 1 and then quickly to attachment 2 of the report, is for the property outlined in red. It's 7035 10th concession. It's just approximately, I think, 600 meters north of County Road 8. So way down at the south end of municipality, in an area identified primarily as agricultural. If we go to attachment 2, Sean, you'll see it's zooming in to the east corner of the property, right at the front where its 10th concession is. And you'll see a primary dwelling, which is identified, and then an arrow with the labeled garden suite on it. And that was something that was introduced first by application in 2012. An application back in that time was to allow temporary uses for garden suites. And quite commonly, what the town had seen and what had become sort of the norm throughout, especially the rural parts of Ontario, garden suites for a family member who was in need due to health conditions, or perhaps parents who are moving in age and needed the assistance of family members who live in the primary dwelling. So that was allowed on a 5-year basis as a temporary use, which is allowed under the official plan and the Planning Act at the time. And then there was an extension that came forward to council again under the Planning Act to extend it by 3 years. Then there was this move towards in the legislative world around allowing these things more on a permanent basis. So the landowner just held off until that came into being. The official plan now accounts for them. And in the agricultural area, you can have, based on the official plan policy, an additional residential unit within a primary dwelling, or you can have one separate, subject to a rezoning. So the application before us tonight is to allow for the garden suite, as it was called at the time, to be converted into an ARU, an additional residential unit, which means you would fundamentally have 2 dwelling units on this site. And very briefly, Mr. Mayor and Council, what this is really asking for tonight is permission to go to a public meeting under the Planning Act, because it is a zoning bylaw amendment and public consultations required. It's evaluated against the PPS and the county official plan in our report. And on summary, we see that this is promoted by both of those policy documents, and we think it fits within the policy framework. And then within the Tecumseh official plan, which is the most current translation of Provincial Planning Act requirements into policy, you'll see that there is a very detailed policy section for lands designated agriculture. And when Mr. Jeffrey speaks to the other applications, there's also detailed policies for residential areas. So for this one, it speaks to allowing a standalone additional residential unit subject to meeting certain criteria. It would have to be subordinate by way of rezoning to the existing primary dwelling on the property. There is no other additional residential unit on the property, or garden suite. You can only have just this one external one or detached. It uses the same access driveway as the primary dwelling. There is it won't be eligible for severance in the future. So that's sort of a policy notifier that because you may be able to have an accessory residential unit, it doesn't mean in 10 years you can come along and start severing these off and creating more non-farm lots out in the agricultural area, which is in conflict with many objectives. There's adequate servicing. And in this case, through the temporary provisions, there was adequate septic facility, and there's water municipal available. And in some circumstances, parking, tree preservation, landscaping provisions if deemed necessary. So we've reviewed this request for rezoning against the policy, but we've also reviewed it against the draft regulations that are being developed with respect to additional residential units, ARUs, and we find that it fits within those draft guidelines. And ultimately, our recommendation to council is that at a minimum, we proceed to a public meeting, give notification to those within the area offering input to council before one is made at a public meeting, and then proceed ultimately in the future for council to make a decision. So Mr. Mayor, very quickly and briefly, that is the application that's being sought to go to a public meeting this evening by council.
Okay, so it's basically the scheduling of the meeting. So I think Mr. Hillman gave quite an explanation. So I'm looking now for a motion and that we authorize administration to move forward. Councillor Dowie moves, Councillor Altenhoff support. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, the second zoning bylaw amendment we brought forward by our manager of planning, and it's basically a proposed additional residential unit at 13554 Riverside Drive, scheduling of a public meeting. So from that, Mr. Jeffries, you can certainly bring that report forward and your recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could have attachment 1 on the screen, please. The 0.32 hectare subject property outlined in red here is situated on the north side of Riverside Drive, just east of Christie Lane. It's currently occupied by a 1,600 square foot home and a 975 square foot one-story detached garage and a shed. Attachment 2, please. The surrounding land uses are predominantly low-density residential, constituting large lots, lots of open space. To the west, some distance, however, there is a 4-story retirement dwelling, just beyond which is Lakewood Park North, and you can see Lakewood Park South on the south side of Riverside Drive there as well. So there's good access from this property to amenities in the area. Attachment 3, please. The proposal is to demolish those existing buildings on the site and replace them with a new 2-story single unit dwelling, which would include a 2-story garage that would contain an ARU in the 2nd story. And that garage and ARU would be connected by a covered breezeway that is open on all sides to the dwelling. The 2-story single dwelling has a footprint of roughly 3,000 square feet, which includes a wraparound open roof porch. The attached garage has a footprint of roughly 1,900 square feet, includes portions of a roof porch and the open breezeway. The first floor of that garage will contain a 4-car garage that will serve both the main dwelling and the ARU in the 2nd story, with access through an internal vestibule and staircase that provides access to that 2nd story ARU. Attachment 4, please. So this is the floor plan of the proposed ARU. It has a total lot or total square footage of 1,017 square feet, excuse me. Consists of a bedroom, bathroom, living room, and a dining kitchen area. All utilities for the proposed dwelling and ARU will be provided through the existing service connections to the site. The proponent has also provided artistic renderings in the next couple attachments. And if we could go to attachment 5. There. So the one on top shows the view from Lake St. Clair, looking toward Riverside Drive. You can see the covered open breezeway and the relative size of the garage and the house. The next one is the southern facade from Riverside Drive. So if you were standing on Riverside Drive, this is what you would see as proposed. And the next 2 renderings on the next attachment show the proposed new dwelling and ARU/garage from the eastern facade and the western facade perspectives. So the applicant has submitted a rezoning application. As Brian noted in his presentation, the as of right zoning for these areas will come at a later date once we've gone through a couple of these public meetings, and we've had a chance to further assess and analyze some of the components, and each one to date has brought some unique challenges and unique aspects to it. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is simply to change the current zoning from residential type 1 zone R1 to a site-specific residential type 1 zone to permit the ARU above the proposed attached garage. The provincial policy statement includes a number of policies. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're in the report, but some of the highlights are that the communities are supposed to accommodate a range and mix of residential types, to efficiently use land and resources. And one that's very relevant to this proposal is that municipalities should be permitting and facilitating all housing types required to meet the social, health, economic, and well-being requirements of current and future residents, including special needs requirements and needs arising from demographic changes, which is what is the purpose of this area that's before you now. And all types of residential intensification, including additional residential units, are to be promoted. The county OP then establishes that development should take place in primary settlement areas, and that second dwelling units are generally permitted within all single unit dwellings. It leaves it up to the local official plans to develop more detailed policies and provisions related to ARUs. And in that respect, the town of Tecumseh official plan, which is in attachment 6, and shows the designation as residential. If we could see just attachment 6 up on the screen. The corresponding policies that pertain to that residential designation are contained in subsection 4.2.2 VII, which establishes that these areas are to be permitted. And there's the official plan schedule, and you can see that the subject property is in a residential designation. They're to be permitted in not only single unit dwellings, but in semi-detached and townhouse dwelling units, subject to some criteria, which are that the gross floor area is equal to or less than the gross floor area of the primary dwelling unit, that it fronts on a road and has access to a municipal road, that there are full municipal services and no constraints, and that there's adequate off-street parking. And this proposal generally conforms to those OP criteria. Because the property is currently zoned R1, which is illustrated in attachment 7, it permits a single unit dwelling, but it does not, as of yet, permit an ARU as of right. So the amendment procedures that council has to consider are contained in subsection 10.18 of the official plan, and they include the degree of conformity of the proposal to the plan and its consistency with the provincial policy statement, the suitability of the land for the proposed use and the need for it, the compatibility of the proposed use with surrounding land uses, the ability of the town's infrastructure and the town's transportation system to accommodate the proposed use. And again, those tests are generally satisfied. The reports also include an evaluation of the proposed application against the draft ARU guidelines. And they include the general location and the setbacks, which are subject to the zoning that applies to the main dwelling. Now, in this case, there is a parallel minor variance application that's going before the Committee of Adjustment on February 28th to address a western side yard width of 1.8 meters, where 9 feet is required, and also to allow for a portion of the new proposed residential dwelling to encroach into the established building line. So that will establish where the proposed dwelling and attached garage can be situated. The zoning before council and that will be before council at the public meeting is simply to allow for that ARU to be located in the second story of the attached garage. It There's also a recommendation or guideline pertaining to gross floor area, and that's that it's a maximum of 50% of the primary dwelling unit. In this case, the ARU is proposed to be 1,017 square feet, which represents 25% of the primary dwelling GFA, which is well within that guideline. That there shall be one water service and sanitary service per lot for the main dwelling in ARU. And as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be serviced through the existing connections. In terms of parking, there should be one parking space for the ARU. They provided that through the attached parking on the main floor of the garage. And then finally, that the ARU shall have its own exterior entrance separate from the exterior entrance to the primary dwelling unit, which is the case with this proposal. So the proposed ARU's location, design, size, and setbacks from lot lines are all generally consistent with the draft ARU guidelines, subject to the minor variance being addressed at the Committee of Adjustment on February 28th. So in summary, we believe that this proposal is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement, county OP, and the Tecumseh official plan. And we're recommending that this go forward to a public meeting to provide an opportunity to hear any concerns from any interested stakeholders that may have an interest in this proposal. So the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is that the scheduling of a public meeting on March 22nd, 2022 at 5:45 p.m. in accordance with the Planning Act for an application seeking to amend zoning bylaw 2065 by rezoning a 0.32 hectare parcel of land situated on the north side of Riverside Drive, approximately 65 meters east of its intersection with Christie Lane, in order to permit an additional residential unit within a proposed single unit dwelling in accordance with subsection 4.2.2, item 7 of the Tecumseh official plan be authorized.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Any questions or comments? Okay, the recommendation has been brought forward to authorize. Councillor Houston moves to authorize a meeting. So do I support? Councillor Tonio. On the report, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Jeffries, and I believe you're on still with C. Again, zoning bylaw amendment, proposed additional residential unit attached at 292 Lesbros Road, scheduling for a public meeting. So call upon yourself, our manager, to bring that proposal forward and a recommendation.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attachment 1, please. So the subject property in this case is situated on the east side of Lesbros Road, where it intersects with Little River Boulevard, and it's outlined in red on that attachment. It's got a lot area of 7,748 square feet. So it's a little smaller than the one we were just dealing with. And it's occupied by 1,650 square foot, one-story single unit dwelling and a shed in the rear yard. Attachment 2, please. The surrounding land uses are, again, predominantly residential. The exceptions being a commercial medical office on the northwest corner of Lesbros and Little River. And to the north of this office are multi-unit dwellings that front onto Lesbros Drive. A municipal park, Arrowhead Park, as you can see on this attachment, is located about 200 meters west of the subject property, fronting on Little River Boulevard. Attachment 3, please. So the proposal in this case is to convert the basement of that existing single unit dwelling into an ARU and have the main floor of the dwelling remain as the primary residential unit. The main floor would also include an existing common space, so that would be used by both the primary dwelling and the ARU. Attachment 4, please. And then this is the floor plan of the proposed basement ARU, which is 854 square feet in area and consists of 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living dining area. There are also 3 parking spaces, 2 for the primary dwelling and 1 for the ARU to be accommodated on the site. And they would be accessed through an existing entrance that would be renovated into a common vestibule. Again, all utilities and services for the proposed area would be provided through the existing service connections. The zoning bylaw amendment to application in this case is to change the current zoning of residential zone 2, R2, to a site-specific R2 zone to permit the ARU in the basement of the existing dwelling. I won't repeat the provincial policy statement and county official plan policies that pertain to the same as the previous report. And as are the Tecumseh official plan criteria for these ARUs. And in general, the proposed ARU in the basement is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the county official plan and the Tecumseh official plan. The current R2 zoning does not permit for an ARU, so the application is before us to consider the rezoning of it to permit that. Again, just as a quick reminder, 1018 of the official plan contains the criteria to be considered when looking at or reviewing a zoning bylaw amendment, and that's the degree of conformity with the plan, the consistency with the PPS, the need for this type of use, the compatibility, the adequacy of the infrastructure and the transportation system, and again, what it meets, generally meets all of those criteria. The application was also evaluated against the guidelines, and it meets all of those guidelines to a T. So there are no concerns with respect to this meeting the draft guidelines, which we hope to shortly have before council as permanent guidelines, and reflected in a zoning bylaw amendment that would permit the ARUs as of right, subject to certain conditions being met. So to summarize, it's consistent with the BPS and the county OP and Tecumseh OP. A public meeting to consider the rezoning and give an opportunity for interested stakeholders to come out and share any thoughts with council is recommended. The formal recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is that the scheduling of a public meeting on March 22nd, 2022 at 6:15 in accordance with the Planning Act for an application seeking to amend zoning bylaw 1746 by rezoning the 719.8 square meter parcel land situated on the east side of L'Esperance Road, immediately adjacent to L'Esperance Road Little River intersection, in order to permit an attached ARU within the basement of the existing single-unit dwelling on the property in accordance with subsection 4.2.2 item 7 of the Tecumseh official plan be authorized.
All right, questions? Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe more of a comment, and I do have a couple questions. But as we've seen tonight, ARUs can take three, or multiple different, they can look different, right? We had one earlier, which was detached, one which is sort of semi-detached, and this one is kind of all within an existing envelope of a, existing residential building. So I think it'll be interesting to see the way these develop, because we've got three of these and three public meetings, and things go on. When we rezone for an ARU in this case within an existing building, is there any tax implications for a resident? Is it, because the building is essentially a duplex of sorts, but it's still in the same footprint. So is there any impact to the tax roll for a case like this? And I'm just wondering, an ARU in an existing building, it's kind of like transforming the property into a duplex where it's not a duplex. So I guess I've just got some questions in my mind of the impact.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I can tell you is that there's no development charge for an ARU. In terms of tax implications, I would imagine that the property at some point would get reassessed, and whatever tax category applies to the single-unit dwelling would apply to that. But I have to defer to our treasurer to elaborate on that if possible.
And I guess I don't need an answer now. I was just,
I think it's a great question because
Yeah.
it does impact on servicing. You know, more water be using, sanitary, more use. So there is more level of services required. And so interesting to me that it'd be interesting to hear from Impact as well. And my understanding is if the services are required to deal with that, there should be a measurable taxation to compensate that. But that's a great question. I don't know if Mr. Hillman.
Mr. Mayor, through you, we will certainly look into that because interesting to hear you say water, wastewater. Of course, the rates will reflect that on consumption. So you can see how that's captured on the bill, but there is a question around how MPAC is going to classify these and if they have turned their mind fully to the impacts. So, you know, by the time we come back for a public meeting, we'll consult with Mr. Kitsos, but also our peers and at MPAC as well to see what the implications are from a taxing perspective for the municipality. It is a very good question.
Yeah. Supplementary, Councillor.
yeah, thank you. And through you, you know, I can also see an impact in our garbage collection, you know, as well. But I'm just wondering in my mind, you know, really the difference, and you know, we'll hear from MPAC of, you know, a duplex versus, you know, a house with an ARU. It's you know, essentially 2 units, but you know, so it'll be interesting to see or hear back what their comments are on it. So thank you.
I have also in the provision of the bylaw as well, like I didn't hear any, like not the first 2, but the last one would be a great short-term rental unit. And so is there any protection in the bylaw that would say, no, it becomes a primary residential unit. It can't be utilized for short-term rental?
That's another issue that we are going to be coming to council with in the near future. It's a separate report. There are no protections in the current bylaw. But again, that's another issue that we can look into and have more information, more detailed information for council at the public meeting, keeping in mind that this report tonight was simply to give an overview and to get this proposal to a public meeting.
Okay, that's great. But just a side piece, I know it's off track a little bit, but I know the city of Windsor are looking at licensing, you know, short-term rentals as well to have a little bit more control and where they should be. So that's something that we should be, I think, looking as well. Okay, any further questions or comments? Then as a recommendation was brought forward by Mr. Jeffries, a motion to authorize a public meeting. Councillor Houston and Councillor Altenhoff, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, 3A, legislative and clerk services. The COVID-19 economic recovery temporary outdoor patio for 2022. I'll call upon our director.
Thank you,
Ms.
Your
Bond.
Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. So this evening before you, again, we are providing a recommendation to council with regards to extending the town's temporary outdoor patios guidelines and bylaw for 2022. Council will recall that consideration was given to a report in both 2020 and 2021 entitled COVID Economic Recovery Temporary Patios, which supported the extension of existing liquor licenses to temporary outdoor patios on private property throughout the town for the duration of 2020 and 2021, provided businesses complied with the town's outdoor patio guidelines. This supported the existing liquor licenses to temporary patios on town property as well during those years, and provided businesses complied with the town's temporary outdoor patio guidelines and entered into an encroachment agreement. They'd also authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign any encroachment agreements for any encroachments onto municipal lands. The purposes of this report is to advise council that the AGCO is once again allowing for these extensions and without having to apply for licensing through the AGCO, subject to the compliance with and obtaining municipal approval. So once again, we're recommending to council to adopt the guidelines for 2022. We have reviewed them for consistency in accordance with the COVID-19 response framework, and we've tracked those minor changes on the appended guidelines to this report. So we are once again recommending that a bylaw be entered into later on this evening, bylaw 2022-07, to adopt the temporary patio guidelines for this year. That the CBO be authorized to inspect all the temporary patios to ensure compliance with the guidelines. That council support extension of existing liquor licenses to December 31st, 2020 for temporary patios for businesses in compliance with the guidelines. And that the extension of existing liquor licenses to temporary patios on town property be subject to an encroachment agreement with the town in form and content satisfactory to the town solicitor, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute any such encroachment agreements. That is my report to you this evening on the temporary patio program for this year, and happy to answer any questions of the members.
All right, thank you, Ms. Moy. Councilor Dowie.
Well, thank you, Worship, and so thank the administration for the report. I know there was definitely a reference to some of the challenges we had last year with the particular property involving parking and the distribution of such and use of adjacent properties, given the occupation of the temporary patio on the required parking spots. So I was hoping that just if there might be an elaboration for our viewers as to what changes we'll see this year to help alleviate situations like that where adjacent business owners are feeling the burden of this relaxation of the rules.
So
I see Mr. Hillman or Ms. Moy.
thank you. I'll let Brian answer
Mr.
that
Mayor,
question.
yes, I will. I will offer some comments on that if you wish, Mr. Mayor, and it's a good question. And we did make note of one property in particular, and I know Mr. Dow, Councilor Dowie was involved with a particular property, and it was quite a confined site. And I think one of the things we learned is that probably in reviewing these, there's a real focus on two fundamental things. One is that the property owner has signed off. A lot of these are plazas, and it's a tenant situation. So the owner has signed off of the plaza, great. And then we focus on the person who's applying for the permit. And quite often on smaller scale, 2 or 3 little units that front a parking area, the 2 units that might be beside the unit that's asking for the patio are not adequately taken into account as to the viability and the operation of their sites. And the one that we ran into, it seemed like there was a little bit of a communication breakdown between the owner of the little plaza, the person running the restaurant with the patio, and the adjacent tenant. And there were very fine details around the design and layout of the site that probably could have benefited from some greater dialogue between those 3 parties that are actually affected. That I'm familiar with, we only ran into this the one time. And I think our efforts will be to ensure that where we see those potential problems, and this was quite evident once it got underway, that we probably become part of the dialogue between the owner, the applicant, and the adjacent tenant, who is quite often abutting directly onto the parking area. And sometimes it's a matter of ensuring that their interests are understood and balanced, because this is very much a program that's intended to help during this time, during the global pandemic, but it can have some unintended consequences. So I think what we've learned is just ensuring that all the parties have an opportunity to dialogue amongst themselves and that we understand what the issues are. I hope that helps, because I didn't want to get into maybe the specifics of the property involved, but I think that's the lesson learned from our involvement on that property.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Okay, a mover and a seconder on the report, Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, we still have from our clerk, the Municipal Modernization Fund. That's intake 3, the transfer payment agreement, corporate records and information management service review.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, we're happy to be reporting to Council on the Municipal Modernization Fund Intake 3 and the recommendation to enter into a transfer payment agreement for funding that has been approved for a corporate records and information management services review. So as Council is aware, the province has been providing funding to help small and rural municipalities to modernize service delivery and identify new ways to be more efficient and effective under the Municipal Modernization Program. On August 16th, 2021, the province announced a third intake under its MMP to allow municipalities to benefit from provincial funding to conduct third-party reviews, as well as to implement projects to increase efficiency and effectiveness and lower costs in the longer term. These initiatives are being undertaken by third-party reviews and result in public reports posted to municipalities' website. So earlier this evening, we had presentations on the digital strategy and the business continuity and disaster mitigation programs that were successfully funded under the Municipal Modernization Fund. We also had a report out to Council not too long ago with regards to the investing shared economic development opportunities and shared services with Lakeshore, as well as the town's payroll processes. So administration reviewed the parameters for intake 3 and submitted an application to conduct a third-party review of the corporate records and information system for the town. And on January 25th, 2022, the province announced that the town's application was successful and funding was approved for $50,880 to fund the cost of an independent third-party review of the town's corporate records and information management systems, with reports due back to the province by January 31st of 2023. So the third-party review will undertake a comprehensive assessment of the town's current state of its records and will provide the overall framework or a plan for improving service delivery, reducing costs and realizing efficiencies through digitization opportunities and electronic records. So this will tie nicely into the digital strategy that we heard about earlier this evening. And the review will also identify gaps and focus administration to take comprehensive integrated approaches to managing information in all formats across the organization, which will help guide the selection and implementation of essential technology solutions, digitization of projects, as well as determine the best approach for maximizing value from current and future technology investments. The assessment would also provide a long-term strategy relating to policy processing guidelines needed for the town and identify vital records to be addressed in the business continuity and disaster recovery strategy, as we also heard about earlier this evening. So during the 2022 budget process, there was approval provided in the legislative services budget for $40,000 for professional services to help fund this review. I'm happy to advise that with this funding, those funds can most likely be reallocated within other areas of the budget. So we're given the approval here. So this evening, we are respectfully asking that Council receive this report and that Bylaw 2022-008 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a transfer payment agreement for the municipal modernization funding under intake 3 to fund a third-party review of the corporate records and information services for the town be adopted.
All right, thank you, Clerk. Do we have any questions or comments on the report as presented? Then on the recommendation, moved by Councillor Houston and supported by Councillor Altenhoff. On the report, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that report is carried. Okay, so next is the also legislative and the clerk services, the closure and sale of portions of Des Road Drive. So I'll call upon the director again to summarize the report and recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have 4 recommendations with regards to the closure and sale of portions of Des Road Drive. With this report this evening, Council may recall back in December of 2020, we brought a report forward regarding the closure and sale of a portion of the Des Road Drive. And at that time, that report and the recommendations were approved. So at the time, 11 Winds Holdings Inc. was in discussions with the town regarding proposed improvements to their existing parking area and related improvements to the grading and stormwater management of their property located at 13375 Des Road Drive. And they were working towards the completion of engineering drawings at the time, subject to the town's approval. The future parking lot improvements would have necessitated 11 Winds to acquire a portion of the town's municipal right-of-way, which fronts 13375 Des Road Drive. And this portion of the right-of-way was once utilized as part of the Des Road Drive cul-de-sac. However, with the prior extensions of the Des Road Drive westerly till Sylvester Drive, the paved portion of the road comprising the cul-de-sac were physically removed. The transfer of this portion of the former cul-de-sac was considered appropriate as it no longer serves any municipal purposes as an open road other than a small portion which includes a sanitary sewer over which the town would retain an easement. So the purpose of this report is to advise council that 11 Winds has not pursued improvements to their property located at 13375 Des Road Drive, nor the purchase of the portion of the right-of-way once utilized at the part of the Des Road Drive cul-de-sac. This report is also going to make recommendations for other portions of the Des Road Drive cul-de-sac, which are not in use, to be closed and declared surplus to the needs of the town. So the portions of Des Road Drive, which were the subject of the prior report that council considered in December of 2020, were parts 20, 21, and 22 on reference plan 12R 19278. Sorry, Sean, do you mind sharing attachment 1 to this report? I don't know if you can make it much larger than that, but as you can, the portions of the bulb are shown here as parts, as I mentioned, 20, 21, and 22. Thanks, Sean. And parts 1 and 2. So the parts 20, 21, and 22 are shown on, I guess, if we're looking at the map, it's on to the south of the former Des Road Drive. And parts 1 and 2 also are former parts of the cul-de-sac that are no longer in use. So while 11 Winds may not wish to purchase a portion of the right-of-way that abuts their property at this time, it still could be formally closed and offered for sale, as well as the parts 1 and 2 on the north side of the Des Road Drive. And then in the event if either the budding property owners are interested in purchasing a portion of the right-of-way in the future, the untraveled portion of the right-of-way should be legally closed and would be available for sale in a timely manner. So in accordance with the Municipal Act, we do require that notice be given to formally close these portions of the road allowance for 3 consecutive weeks in a local newspaper. In addition, the sale of land policy, which I have appended excerpts to this report, would govern any future sale of that closed portion of the right-of-way. At this time, we are recommending that I be authorized to provide notice in accordance with the town sale of land bylaw and notice bylaw of the intent to close as a highway the portions of Des Road Drive described as parts 1, 2, 20, 21, and 22 of Plan 12R 19278 in the town of Tecumseh, and to declare the land surplus to the needs of the town, and to authorize the subject lands to be sold to the abutting property owners, subject to the town retaining easements over parts 1, 20, and 21. And that following notification, we'd be directed to provide a bylaw for council's consideration to formally authorize the closure of a portion of Des Road Drive, declare the subject lands to be surplus to the needs of the town, authorize the lands to be sold to the abutting property owners, subject to the reservations of the easements as mentioned. And furthermore, that the costs incurred by the town to close up and convey the subject lands be funded from the operating budget of legislative services, with costs to be covered at the time of sale to the abutting property owners. That is the report on this matter this evening, Your Worship, and be happy to answer any questions from the members.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments on the report? And on, okay, the recommendations to adopt the report as presented. Okay, moved by Councilor Houston. Do I support? Councilor Antonio. All in favor? Oppose if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, we'll go to item D, again, legislative clerk services, 2206. That's closure or sale of portion of Brulette Manor. So I'll call
Thank you,
upon
Your
you
Worship.
to begin.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have 4 recommendations on this matter as well this evening. So back in May of last year, Council received a report from the Planning and Development Services with regards to entering into a site plan control agreement with 1230839 Ontario Limited, otherwise operating as the Brulette Manor Long-Term Care Home at 11900 Brulette Court. So at the meeting, Council authorized passing of approval of a site plan control agreement to facilitate the phased development of a new 96-bed long-term care facility, the demolition of the existing 60-bed long-term care facility, and the addition of new associated parking areas, as well as certain landscape service works. The report and resolution also provided for authorization to execute such other acknowledgements, directions for any related transfers or real property registrations contemplated by the site plan control agreement by the mayor and the clerk. So Council subsequently adopted the site plan control agreement under Bylaw 2021-39. And the site plan requires that Brulette Manor obtain a reference plan to accommodate the granting of an easement in favor of the town for drainage purposes, sewer, hydro, gas, water mains, telephones, etc., and conveyance of a road widening in the future if deemed necessary by the town, and to permit the town to convey to Brulette Manor a portion of Brulette Court. The easement in favor of the town and conveyance in favor of Brulette Manor are depicted in the original report from the planning department. The conveyance of a portion of Brulette will accommodate parking lot improvements as set out in the site plan control agreement, and the portion of Brulette Court to be conveyed to Brulette Manor was once utilized as part of the Brulette cul-de-sac. However, with the prior extension of Brulette Court southerly, the paved portions of the road comprising the cul-de-sac bulb were physically removed. The transfer of this portion of the former cul-de-sac would be appropriate as it no longer serves any municipal purposes as an open road. Sean, sorry, do you mind sharing attachment 1 to this report as well? So the purpose of this report is to advise and make recommendations on the closure and sale of that portion of Brulette Court cul-de-sac which no longer exists prior to the execution of acknowledgements and directions for any related transfers or real property registrations contemplated by the site plan control agreement. So what you're seeing on the screen before you is actually part 1, and that portion is no longer being utilized as a roadway, and is the lands that would assist in accommodating Brulette's parking area. And the part 2 is where the town would obtain an easement for the services mentioned earlier, including snow removal, hydro, drainage, etc. So the authority that we're looking for is to close part 1 formally as a road allowance in accordance with the Municipal Act and the giving of notice for 3 consecutive weeks in a local newspaper, and to be able to sell it in accordance with the town sale of land bylaw to the Brulette Manor. So we are recommending this evening that this report be received, that authorization be given to providing notice in accordance with the town sale of land bylaw and notice bylaw of the intent to close as a highway that portion of Brulette Court described as part 1, Plan 12R 28795 in the town of Tecumseh, and declare the subject land surplus to the needs of the town and authorizing it to be sold to the Brulette Manor. And following the notice being given, the clerk be authorized to prepare bylaw for council's consideration to authorize the closure of a portion of Brulette Court, declare the subject lands to be surplus to the needs of the town, and authorizing those lands to be sold to Brulette Manor. And finally, that the costs incurred by the town to close up and convey the subject lands be assigned to Brulette Manor. That is my report this evening. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Moy. Any questions or comments on the report? Then on the recommendation, I moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti and supported by Councillor Houston. All in favor? Oppose if any? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, well, you're on a roll, Madam Clerk. You're on with E and requests to purchase portion of County Road 46 right of way. And as you're reading that, maybe we can get Mr. Firth, you can put up on your shared screen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, we have 3 recommendations on this request to purchase a portion of this right of way before you. So the town received a request from the owners of 4795 County Road 46 to purchase a portion of the town's right of way, which abuts the south side of their property. And you can see that here outlined in red. And the town acquired these lands from the former township of Summit South as part of the Canada South Railway. So the purpose of this report is to provide a recommended response to the request to purchase these lands. The lands currently are still, so this area shown in red is actually abutting the lands that are still owned by the Canada Southern Railway to the south. And as I said, they're shown here in green on this map. And the town land immediately abutting the property has a total area of approximately 0.74 hectares. It's a small segment of a longer strip of land extending to the east and west of the subject parcel that abuts the former railway line. Council may recall that you did adopt a alley closing policy covering the closing and potential sale of streets, alleys, municipal road allowances within the town. The alley closing policy was prepared in accordance with the Municipal Act and the Sale of Land Bylaw, and adopted to provide a consistent approach to the sale of disposal of municipal lands. And this policy was reviewed in accordance with that policy. In the event a resident comes forward requesting an alley or road to be closed, there must be full support from the other residents abutting the policy for the closure to proceed in accordance with the alley policy. The corporation can also initiate the process by declaring an alley or road as surplus. In this instance, residents' agreement is not necessary when the corporation initiates an alley or road to be closed. A meeting will be held. The subject land does not necessarily fall within the scope of this policy. However, in reviewing the request by the owner of 4795 County Road 46 to purchase a portion of the town's land, consideration was given to the procedure set out in the policy. So we've also taken into consideration the sale of land policy in reviewing this request, and that is summarized here. The request to purchase the land has been reviewed by administration, as I mentioned, in accordance with the alley policy, as well as the sale of land policy, and whether it could be declared surplus to the needs of the town. Certain considerations were made when arriving at the recommendations set out above that I'll be reading in a moment, to retain the land and to declare the request for its purchase by the abutting owner. So while the town may not currently be formally used, the land may not currently be used, it could serve a valuable purpose in connection with the former railway line for various modes of improved transportation linkages, rail and or active transportation in the area. This potential for improved transportation linkages could benefit both existing and future residents in the broader area, along with longer-term economic development initiatives in the general facility. The land was no longer owned by the town. If the land was no longer owned by the town, future potential opportunities could not as easily be realized. And if the town land were to be sold in part, it could adversely affect the full optimization of future use by the town. In summary, in the opinion of administration, it would be premature to sell the land at this time, and therefore we are recommending that the land not be declared surplus and the request for it to be privately purchased be declined. Happy to answer any questions of council.
I think that's self-explanatory. I certainly fully recommend the recommendation, but any questions or comments? All right, on the recommendation, moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. Public Works and Engineering Services, our 2021 annual reports for the town of Tecumseh Water Distribution System. So I'd call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendations. Mr. Bartnick. And Mr. Dupuy. And Ms. Bradley.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. That we do. So the summary of the report before you this evening. So the Safe Water Drinking Act prescribes stringent and mandatory requirements to monitor, test, and report on drinking water quality. It requires an annual report to be prepared for the preceding calendar years that identify specific details regarding overall quality of the drinking water supplied and made available to the public by February 28th of each year. The town must also prepare a summary report and present it to council by March 31st of each year as well. The summary report must demonstrate regular review of compliance with the requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and its regulations. The Water Services Divisions provided consumers with reliable, safe drinking water adhering to all regulatory requirements, and there were 0 non-compliance events reported in 2021. In accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, the 2021 annual report and summary report will be made available on the town's website following council's acceptance of these reports. And further to that, the 2 recommendations on the report that the 2021 Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks annual report and summary for the town of Tecumseh Water Distribution System for the year 2021, as prepared in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, OREG 170/03, Section 11 annual reports and Schedule 22 summary reports be adopted, and that the annual report and the summary report be made available for public viewing through the town of Tecumseh website. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bartnick. Any questions or comments to the report? 100% compliance. I don't know what you could do any better than that. That's all. I guess you all get a gold star at on that report. No questions or comments, then a motion to adopt the report as presented. Councillor Alton Hoff, a move and supported by Councillor Tonio. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That report is carried. All right. Public Works, again, the Regional Food and Organics and Biosolid Waste Management Project, one that I'm quite familiar with.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before you, in summary, so in April of 2018, the province issued a food and organic waste policy statement compelling some Ontario municipalities to achieve certain waste diversion targets related to food and organic waste by 2025. As council may recall, in November of 2021, council received a presentation from the general manager of the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority. The presentation outlined steps taken to date by the USWA board, approved oversight committee, and the working group, including a review of the findings by the USWA board approved consultant, which was GHD Limited. The presentation also outlined a third-party review of the consultant's finding by Tetra Tech Canada Limited, and outlined possible industry solutions. So the action requested from all municipalities by the USWA board in their January 12th, 2022 resolution was highlighted under item 3, And it stated that USWA send correspondence to the County of Essex and all municipalities in the region who have yet to respond to indicate whether or not their members or those municipalities will participate in the USWA-led organics program, and to indicate that response by March 31st, 2022. So administration has reviewed the January 19th, 2022 USWA letter and agrees with the regional approach and the USWA Board Resolution 7-2022. We believe this stage approach gives USWA flexibility to continue to research and procure a long-term solution while achieving the mandates, the 2025 targets contained within the policy statement put out by the province. There are a number of recommendations on the report. The first, that the administrative report be received by council, and that council endorse the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority Board Resolution, Resolution 7-2022, that was adopted at its Wednesday, January 12th, 2022 meeting, as contained within the USWA letter to the town dated January 19th, 2022. And further, that council approved Tecumseh's participation in the USWA-led regional organics program. And furthermore, that the clerk provide notification to the County of Essex of Tecumseh's intention to participate in the USWA-led regional organics program no later than March 7th of 2022.
And that's the report. Thank you very much, Mr. Bartnick. And as a member of USWA, I fully, this has been a long process. And I've had the opportunity to converse with our CAO at length and Mr. Bartnick, and fully recommend that the recommendation has been brought forward. At least now it gives us an opportunity, some time, and so that we can exercise due diligence as we move forward to deliver the right project at the right time for the right reasons for the right budget. And so certainly move to endorse the report. Yes, Councilor Dowie. Move. Question. Okay, move. And support by Deputy Mayor McKetty. Any further questions or comments? Councilor Dowie?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm very excited to see this report. I mean, residential collection of organics, I think it's definitely the right way to go. I know not everyone in the county has to, but that this collaboration is coming forward to do it on a regional basis. It can only provide us the benefits and keep our landfill going as long as possible. So I'm really, thank you for your work and the work of the other board members for getting us to this point. And I'm quite excited that we're looking at the future in a really positive way here to address organics and provide a good reuse of the resources that we already have.
All right, thank you for those comments, Councilor. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, has been duly moved, supported. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, C, our Public Works, again, the Tecumseh Water Distribution System, our 2021 inspection report. So again, call on our director.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before you today has one recommendation, that the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks inspection report for the Tecumseh Water Distribution System dated February 1st, 2022 be received. A summary of the report. So the MECP conducts annual inspections of the municipal residential drinking water systems to ensure compliance under the Safe Drinking Water Act and the MECP certificates of approval. They carried out the inspection of the town's water distribution system on January 6th of earlier this year. A copy of that inspection report is contained in attachment 1. There were no incidents of regulatory non-compliance identified, and the town received a final inspection rating of 100% for compliance. The inspection summary rating record, which is in attachment 2 of the report, provides a summarized quantitative measure of the drinking water system's annual inspection and regulated water quality testing performance. And I'm happy to present that the town's inspection risk rating is 0%. So in this case, 0 is good, and in the earlier case, 100% was good. And lastly, I wanted to thank Brad Dupuis and Nicole Bradley and the Water Division staff for all their dedication and hard work, as well as council for your continued support throughout the years.
Well, thank you. I guess you get another gold star. And so again, I want to echo certainly your comments, Mr. Bartnick, to both Mr. Dupuis and Ms. Bradley. Thank you for, again, we've come to, I don't want to say we're not complacent by no means, because the reason why we've got 100%, pretty much all the time is because of, you don't sit on your laurels. So anyway, I just want to say thank you on behalf of council and certainly, most importantly, the citizens of the town, that they can bank on that when they drink water from our taps, it's secured and safe, and that's good news for all of us. And so thank you for that. Okay, members of council, any questions or comments? Again, pretty straightforward. So a motion to receive and adopt the report. Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. So once again, thank you very much. Okay, so that's it for reports, members of council. Any unfinished business? None. New business. Any new business? We have no new business. Then I need a motion to confirm, obviously, go ahead.
Excuse me, your worship. Could we do bylaws?
Well, for some reason, I got confirmatory bylaw, notices of motion, next meeting, adjournment, and yeah, what happened to the bylaws? Oh, I skipped it. I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, we have bylaws.
Thank you, your worship. This evening we have bylaw 2022-07, which is a bylaw to adopt the guidelines for temporary patios for 2022, which was reported on earlier this evening. We also have bylaw 2022-08, which would authorize the entering into of the transfer payment agreement for the municipal modernization intake 3 funding. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings of these 2 bylaws, and if appropriate, third and final.
All right, 2 readings. Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Houston. Any questions or comments on those? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. And 3 readings in order. Councillor Houston, Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, that is carried. All right. Well, we've already done unfinished business. Any new business? No new business. Now we're okay to confirm the proceedings of our works this evening. So if I could have a confirmatory bylaw, 3 readings, Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Any notices of motion? None. Our next meeting, member of council, will be Tuesday, March the 8th. And we have a 4:30 p.m. in-camera meeting, followed by a 5:30 quarter revision on the Antaya drain, followed by a 6:15 p.m. public council meeting, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for home hardware, and followed by our regular council meeting at 7 p.m. So if there's nothing further this evening, members of council, then adjournment is in order. Deputy Mayor Buchetti, Councilor Tonio. On adjournment, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. And with that, members of council, I want to thank you for your indulgence this evening and certainly administration. And for those who were streaming from the comforts of home, our meeting is now complete. So I say, stay safe, and until we meet again, have a good night.